Welcome to the Press Conference podcast. It's been a week, but I'm back, and today I'm speaking to Leyton Orient media manager Luke Lambourne about the club's viral Ultimate Quarantine tournament, as well as his tips on creating viral content, a story about engagement with AS Roma whilst at AFC filed, and his decision to move up north to kickstart his career in football media. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow the podcast to be the first to listen to every episode. Luke was one of the first people I sort of looked at to have on the podcast because, it was at the start of quarantine and he was doing all these big things with Leyton Orient. So welcome, Luke, to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Dan.
No worries, pal. And you've taken sort of a similar route to myself, within the county FA. What was your sort of role within that then?
So my role was marketing and communications with Surrey FA. So that came about, I guess for me, as much as I love football, I never imagined I'd be able to get a job in football. It was just something I kind of enjoyed at the weekends, and I was kind of happy enough with that. It was kind of that dream pie in the sky job that I never thought would come off. So when I saw it come up with the Surrey FA, and it matched quite closely what I had in terms of qualifications and experience and that kind of thing. It was something I really wanted to do, and jumped at the opportunity to apply for it.
Was it sort of an opportunity you thought you could sort of use as a stepping stone to a football club?
I guess that happened once I got in there, because I got into the county FA and I met a lot of great people in there, and they all had about 5 or 6 different roles in football. So when it ever got to the weekend, I'd obviously not have anything further more to do. I'd just kind of go home and have a normal weekend, whereas people I was working with were either coaching or refereeing or something. So it's just that hive of activity, and everyone would come back in on Monday with kind of a different story over the weekend, and that kind of got to me a little bit, and I thought, well, yeah, okay, there's no reason I can't do that as well. And that's when I started volunteering with Hampton and Richmond in the National League South, and it was really good in terms of growing experience for, obviously, with the marketing role. There was plenty you can do, which we'll come on to a bit later, in terms of like the practical stuff in graphics and video editing. But in terms of like the more hands-on stuff, the kind of media work, which you wouldn't really get as much in a county FA, that was massive for me, and it was a really big growing opportunity at that club.
Did you get involved in some of the, just from drawing on my experiences at Northumberland FA, did you get involved in some of like the county cups, live tweeting that and stuff? Did that sort of feed the sort of desire to do club media?
Yeah, I think county cups was probably the hardest part of my professional life, even to date. We had 23 different county cups finals, and we had all the programmes to do, and that was one thing actually when I turned up on my first day, was county cups were coming up, and they said to me, well, have you ever used InDesign before? And I was like, no, I had no idea what that is. I was like, well, do you want to find some YouTube tutorials, because you need to design all the programmes in the next couple of weeks? I was like, okay, well. and yeah, so that was a tough experience, and I had to learn on the job with that. But yeah, in terms of Adobe and that kind of stuff, that was a real eye-opener for me, because I'd always just assumed I'd never be able to get to grips with Photoshop or InDesign. But until you're actually thrown in at the deep end and you have to do it, really kind of helped me kind of unlock those skills. And a lot of late nights in terms of getting those right. A lot of errors made with people's names. I remember getting emails sometimes saying, you spelt my son's name wrong, which... it's a learning curve, and it's their big day, so I had to apologise and all those kind of things. But it was a lot of pressure, but also something which I learned a lot of really good skills.
And these programs like Adobe, InDesign, Photoshop and that, it's not something necessarily you learn a lot through university. Was that sort of your experience? You learned through sort of YouTube tutorials?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I did English literature, so I was never going to use Photoshop for anything at university. So it was literally a case of sitting down one day and cracking on with about 2 hours worth of YouTube tutorials and just clicking as I go along. It's the same for Adobe Premiere, which I use for pretty much every other day in terms of video content. And I think once you are into that kind of Adobe suite and you understand how it works and how versatile it is, then you've got a great kind of weapon at your disposal if you do have that kind of full license. So some fantastic tutorials online, and that's certainly how I picked up my skills.
So just talk us through that move to sort of ASC file. Quite a way to move in. I think it's Blackpool, isn't it?
It was in between Blackpool and Preston, but that kind of came from me being at Hampton and Richmond, and I kind of joined in the season where they finished in the player final, and the whole kind of feeling around the club and getting to there, and that whole everything about it, getting to know the players, getting to know the man, having a drink with the manager afterwards, and all this kind of stuff. I think Martin Tyler was the assistant manager at the time as well. So it was great, all these little kind of opening doors in football. And but also remember losing the player final and everything. I probably felt like the worst I'd ever felt for a game of football, and I probably still say that is now, is seeing how everything went into that kind of one afternoon of a community club, and perversely that made me want to do that as a job for some reason. I don't know how that logic works, but I remember thinking about how great it was to kind of care that much about something. So the idea was for me was to try and get a kind of similar job in full-time football. And if there were jobs down south, then I guess I was just missing them, because at that time nothing was coming up, and there might have been something like a junior designer at Chelsea, or something completely irrelevant to me, or a club like Fulham or something like that, which would have been like a really small piece in a massive team. So nothing ever really kind of came up which seemed like the right kind of fit to me. And I remember just seeing that job for AFC Filed, and I won't be ashamed to say that I probably didn't even know how to say their name when I first saw the job come up. I know a lot of people call them Fly, and I'll be honest, I probably did as well. But the whole role just seemed like everything I wanted to do. It was really hands-on. It was from taking something from kind of inception to execution, and having that kind of whole creative license over it, whilst being at a club that from the outside looked like going in the right direction. Obviously did my research on them, looked at the new ground and aspirations to get in the Football League, and it was something that I really wanted to kind of throw my weight behind. So it came down to two angles for me. It was either I'll have to make a decision in terms of what I wanted to do for a career if I want to stay down south, because ultimately football probably wasn't going to be that accessible with the current job opportunities, or I'd have to change where I lived. So one day just packed up my car and drove up to the middle of nowhere, or nowhere to me at the time, and started the job on Monday. So it's a pretty crazy thing to do, but I think when you do something like that, it gives you the chance to kind of really throw yourself into it and trying to kind of really prove to yourself that you can do it. And it was a fantastic time there for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably see it as something they're not really willing to do. Even myself, if I'd never sort of wanted to move to London, I've always been northern. Was that something you thought you had to do to sort of you had to go to Blackpool, AFC Filed, go and do all that stuff to set yourself up for a job back down south?
I think that was part of the thinking. I think for me as well, what would help is that I was kind of at a crossroads in my life as well. I was with my girlfriend, and we decided we wanted to move up north together. So having someone quite supportive of me with me at the time certainly helped things. But we were both at a kind of area where we weren't exactly sure what we were going to do. We weren't really too settled back where we were. So that kind of helped push me on to kind of make those decisions. But I kind of knew that once you can get your foot into the door and kind of gain that experience, no matter where it is, then it's always going to help later down the line, as it certainly did when it came around to my current job.
Yeah. So what was your sort of day-to-day at Filed then? Because, me being media officer at York, I guess that's the sort of same position. It's a lot of sort of work for that level. Did you sort of feel the same thing where, you were doing a bit of everything?
Yeah, absolutely. And to make matters even madder is that as part of my job as well, I'd kind of look after the marketing for like the sports bar and help with restaurants and stuff like that. So adding to that in terms of like the kind of full-time day-to-day football job was really flat out. And in terms of a day-to-day, like, working in football, you can get something completely different put on your desk on a day-to-day basis. But what was quite nice about Filed is that players all kind of trained on the same area as the offices, so everyone kind of got to know each other quite well. So if there's a case of nipping in to do a bit of content here or a little interview here, it was always quite manageable. And another thing as well was that the manager's door was literally in the main office, so people would be coming in and out. The manager would be popping in, going into the printer and asking if you can help him make it work. So it's quite nice in terms of having moved up and not knowing anyone to get close to people and close to the team, which is quite nice. But in terms of the day to day, not vastly dissimilar to currently Orient in terms of, kind of managing the social media output, the website, overlooking program, and working with designers, and just essentially the kind of the mouthpiece for the organisation, and looking at as many ways as possible to connect with fans in different ways, which we did in some good ways at Filed. I think one of the things I was probably most proud of was launching kind of the club's first kind of club radio for home and away games, which there are some people that are saying, does this mean people aren't going to go to games anymore? And I didn't think that was the case, but it definitely certainly added an area in terms of keeping people connected and driving things forward.
Yeah, and around this sort of time you left, I saw a few tweets from people, not necessarily just at File, but at National League clubs, saying, when you're in a media role like that, it's not necessarily just media. It's, you're doing a bit of the sometimes kit, or getting some stuff for the the bars or whatever. Was that sort of the thing for you at Filed as well? Or
I think for me it was never an issue, I guess, because I'd come from doing it in the league below, and I'd come from where if I was never washing the kit, but I'd go to away days and I'd carry the kit into the home changing rooms and away changing rooms as a volunteer, just because that's what I wanted to do. So that always stayed with me at Filed. I never really second guessed it. If I went on the coach, I'd turn up with a kit man, and I'd offer him a hand, and that just never really crossed my mind. I think it's quite a good feeling to have, that you can kind of be proud of the club and who you are and helping people out. And I think from a media perspective as well, as if you can kind of be as involved as you can in all sorts of areas, that it kind of pays off, because people are more willing to talk to you or tell you certain things or give you guidance. So I think one massive bit of advice I give to anyone, especially if you've got a chance to get involved at a club lower down, is just properly throw yourself in. Don't have any reservations about doing it, and just people always are looking for a hand with certain things. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just going back to the sort of media side of everything as well. I think you had a sort of few viral tweets as well, didn't you, at AFC Filed?
Yeah, that's my first kind of taste of that, really. The first one was after an FA Trophy game, where three of those lads had like a little slip that they handed into the match announcer, and it said a car registration on it. He goes, "Can you read this out? My dad's blocked in by a white Nissan Micra." And the registration was anyone for a BJ. And
classic.
And he read it out. And do you know what? I was standing next to him at the time, and I didn't even clock it. He didn't clock it. And then I just on my phone on Twitter looking at what was happening during the game, and someone's just replied, "Has he really just read that out?" And just looking at the moment, looking at the slip and stuff. And then it's all kind of come to light what had happened. And then the next morning, I remember there's just a couple of photos of them looking cheeky, and I thought, well, let's see if this works. And yeah, so I think sometimes things like that. And I think a lot of the times I've gone viral with certain things, there's never been too much forethought in it. Mm-hmm. I think the more you try and plan things, the more people can see that you're trying to either go big or trying to be viral, which kind of puts people off a bit. So with that, it was literally a case of seeing a photo in the morning and seeing how it would unfold. And then it turned into quite a good PR exercise for us as well, because this kind of story developed, and we managed to get in contact with them. They came into the club and we gave them some shirts and stuff, and they were sending me messages like, "We're not in trouble, are we?" I was like, "No, come on, you're not in trouble." Like the amount of reach you've given us today, we've been on TalkSport and in all the papers and stuff like that. So yeah, we gave them a few shirts, and won over quite a few people by saying, this is how clubs should be doing things and that kind of thing. So yeah, for us that was certainly for me, my first time I'd ever really kind of had that experience through social media. So it was great, and yeah, certainly won't forget it.
Yeah, were they a bit sort of sheepish then when they came in? Were their parents or?
No, I think they just couldn't believe what was happening. If they felt like they were getting trapped. So I took him into the club shop to pick him out a shirt, and they were just looking around as if like, "Come on, what's happening here? There's a police officer going to come out or something." But yeah, no, they were good as gold, to be fair. And on the back of that, they go home and away now. I see them all the time. I had them been involved in some other videos I did, and I think for Filed, a big part of it was chairman's always been keen to get young supporters involved. I think with what's happened with Blackpool up there, and people going back to Blackpool, they kind of lost a kind of faction of people that may have been going to Filed. So doing loads of work in schools and trying to encourage future generations of fans. So yeah, that was one that I know the chairman was happy to see as well.
Yeah, I was just sort of scrolling through your LinkedIn. I seen someone like left a recommendation for you actually, which said, you even got a bit of feedback from AS Roma and Man City, was it?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the Man City one was, but I remember with Roma we had this is a good story actually. We had our assistant manager Colin Woodthorpe, who was with Dave Challoner. Obviously, they were sacked at some point this season, but Colin was walking and he'd found a coin and it looked really kind of like old fashioned, and he brought it into the office and he was really excited about it. And he's like, I think I found a Roman coin. And everyone was like gathering around looking at it. He was like, wow, look at that, that's brilliant. Someone goes, you should treat that to Roma and see what they say. Like, okay, we'll give that a go. And Colin's like really like dead serious, and he was like really excited about it. I think, got a few quid here, it could be in the papers. And, he used to play for Norwich, so he's had his heyday, but, he's thinking maybe one more time in the papers. And eventually Roma has come back and tweeted, and they found that it was worth about 40p as a replica. And Colin was absolutely gutted. And I think they said to us, if we send them the coin, they'll give us a scarf and stuff like that. But yeah, just from then on in, we had little bits and pieces like that where you just kind of engage with bigger clubs. And obviously Roma kind of led the way for a long time on social media with their approach to things. So if as a National League club you can kind of amplify your own kind of social standing with interaction from them, then fantastic. Yeah, so yeah, they're involved in a couple of things here and there.
Yeah, I guess it's good engagement, whatever. I mean, for you, did you come up with the sort of born to be filed hashtag? Is that the?
I didn't actually come up with that one. That was there before me. I'm happy to say I wouldn't say it was my favourite, but yeah, that was one that kind of stuck around a bit. And yeah, another one of the areas that the club there's a couple in there before me full time. I think they had a full time guy in the National League North. So I think that was his kind of legacy, was leaving that one behind.
So were you the sort of only full-time media staff or, paid media staff there?
Yeah, so the kind of match day team developed a bit more as I was going along. And I think for me, given that I'd been at Hampton and had worked with students there and knew how important, our volunteers were to kind of match day output, one of the first things I did was get in touch with the local unis and say, who's around and who can we get involved, put some adverts out. So that kind of grew slowly, and yeah, towards the end we had about 3 or 4 people that had been there for 12 months on internships that were doing all sorts of things from commentary to filming and photography and all sorts. So yeah, I was quite keen, having kind of been through that volunteer phase, to try and get a few in. And so I know what a massive opportunity it is to get at a club where you can get quite hands-on. I think every now and then someone will reach out in terms of advice and what they should do. And mine will always be, if you're starting out, just volunteer at a non-league club, because the kind of experience you'll get from doing that will be far outweigh what you can do on a course, or actually walking the walk is such a big thing. And the things you'll learn from the league and football will be massive. So yeah, to get some volunteers in and get some help in terms of doing it was great.
So how long did you sort of stay at File that then?
It was November till just after February, March. About 14 months I was there. It is absolutely mad 14 months. We obviously went to Wembley twice, losing to Salford in the playoff final, and then a week later it was obviously against Orient in the FA Trophy, which is got that anniversary coming up soon, which might make things awkward. But yeah, it was a fantastic year. And I think as well, when you are working full time in football and you are kind of seeing the players so often, and when everything that they've put into it over the course of the season, the disappointment of losing against Salford, to then go back a week later and see them kind of not completely make amends, obviously, because I think everyone would have rather been promoted, but to go back there, and it'd been so easy for them to just roll over again and get beat. And 2 defeats at Wembley in 8 days is a really tough thing to have taken. So yeah, for them to go back and have done it was brilliant. And yeah, I had a fantastic time after that.
So was this when the sort of Orient job came up then, during that time, or was this after?
No, I mean, it had been, I'd kind of, obviously Elliot, who's gone on to Bournemouth now, had been at Orient for a good few years. I'd kind of been in touch with him on and off throughout that time, just obviously being in the same league and
Mm-hmm.
happened to get on quite well. So obviously when Wembley came around as well, we were talking even more, and got to know a few people at the club, just through just good kind of day-to-day dealings and that kind of stuff. And then as things developed, obviously back in I think December when the job out came up, it wasn't something that I'd necessarily had planned for, but I knew my girlfriend had wanted to relocate back down south, so kind of everything had fit together quite nicely, and yeah, it's been great to have started here, even if it's been the weirdest time ever to start a new job.
Yeah. Do you sort of have a bigger team at Orient then? Is it a bit easier to sort of navigate that?
Yeah, I've been really lucky in the fact that we've had a media assistant there, who's nearly full time. He's still at uni at the moment, Dan Walker, who pretty much full time held down the job in between Elliot leaving and me starting, and he did an unbelievable job at it. And he's fantastic. He's really enthusiastic, and he's not afraid to try anything. So yeah, we make a great team so far, and yeah, it's literally had about 2 weeks in the office together before we could, had to throw all our plans out the window. But yeah, in a short time working with him, he's been brilliant. And in terms of the social media output we've had as well, obviously early on with the whole ultimate quarantine thing, and we did a kind of football manager playthrough as well, which we really kind of threw into. But yeah, Dan's there kind of full time as well, and hopefully we'll be staying on after uni as well.
And you were sort of one of the first clubs to actually do something sort of viral during that time. Whose idea was that? Was that yours or just a combined
It was
idea?
it was a strange one because we started with the football manager the day before. So we were supposed to play Bradford that day. So we decided what we'll do is we'll appoint the fans as manager, and we'll do it on Twitter via like polls and stuff. We'll let them make the decisions, what the team is, what position we're going to do, and what formation, how we're all going to line up. And that went down really well, and fans really kind of took to that. And even though they lost 1-0, it's a good day of content at a time where no one was really sure what was going on, and still obviously quite early on. So that's the Saturday, and then I think that night was when everyone started playing noughts and crosses with each other,
Oh, yeah.
and we kind of not for any main reason, but we kind of not been involved in that. And I remember the conversation between me and Dan was, do we do that? And I think Dan's idea was, should we do a tournament of that? And I remember just kind of thinking, well, I think the time's pretty past for that. I think it wasn't the most exciting thing in the world. So we had a conversation like, okay, how can we kind of take that idea? Because you can see that clubs want to interact with each other. You can see supporters are loving it as well. So how can we take it one more and try and do something a bit more exciting with that? And yeah, that's when FIFA came about, and we kind of bounced a couple of ideas off each other, and it just kept evolving as we were doing it. Dan was, really sure that the kind of tournament aspect would be great. He wanted to go straight away with 128, and I was thinking, I think that's a bit ambitious. Let's start with 64, and then eventually we doubled our numbers anyway within about a day. So very much a joint effort, and it was a beast that kind of kept evolving as we were doing it.
I suppose you're sort of throwing a lifeline as well to these clubs who are, they don't have any sort of content. They've been thrown into this lockdown. There's no football games going on. You're giving them some content, really. I mean, I think, I think I saw you put a tweet of something. You grew the social media so much, didn't you, after that?
Yeah, well, from when it started to when it finished, I think we peaked at about 26,000 new followers, which was
Not bad.
absolutely incredible for that weekend. Obviously, that's gone down now as things do. So we're never going to sustain 26. I think it's probably stuck at about 80, probably about 22,000 new followers. But yeah, in terms of the numbers we had over that time, absolutely incredible. We were given some work from an advertising agency in terms of the news coverage, and combining that with Twitter, and it looked like we were reaching about 90 million people with what it is we've done. So it was incredible, and for it to be so early on as well was obviously quite a big help for me, because obviously no one at the office had really heard of me for about a week, and then probably might not see anyone again for quite a while. So it was good for us to as a new media team to kind of have that kind of success. And but as I said, as it kind of developed, we kind of kept adding more to it, and the fundraising element was something which was a massive part of it. And I think in the end we managed to raise £83,000, which will obviously go to kind of clubs that are going to struggle at the moment, because obviously with what is going on and no match day income, a lot of football league clubs are really going to struggle. So if that can be any way, some kind of help, and kind of, I'm not sure if keep clubs alive, but certainly keep things going for a while, then that'd be amazing. So yeah, the whole thing was fantastic, and did so many interviews as well. Usually as a media officer, you get your request come in and you pass it on to the relevant person. But when you're the relevant person, it becomes a bit of a different style. So between myself and Dan, we had so many interviews that we were doing. BBC, Talksport, there was TV interviews, and it was probably never a situation that's probably never going to happen again. I can probably put my hand on heart and say that as a media officer. But yeah, it was incredible, and the contacts we made and kind of steps we're taking into esports now have come out of it have all been brilliant.
Yeah, I bet you were a really popular figure in the staff room after that. I think one of the tweets I did see, which come off that, I think Tranmere put something out, which was, we're not getting involved anymore because involvement with a certain newspaper. But at that point, did you think, this isn't going to work, or was it just like a little thing?
Yeah, I think that's why me and Dan work so well, because I'm a pessimist. I think he's probably more of an optimist. So when stuff like that was happening, I was kind of doing the kind of crisis management about how we can kind of get the best out of that, where he was thinking, well, we'll just replace him with someone else. So we had that kind of conversation, and yeah, there were a few teams that dropped out as a result of it, and kind of looked at the situation, spoke to Dream Team, who are the front of shirt sponsor, and they agreed they didn't need to be on the branding for it. So it wasn't ever a situation where they'd ever had any kind of involvement with the tournament in terms of organising or anything like that. So for us, it was a case of kind of taking it off going forward. And as you say, it did kind of create a bit of tension to it. There's also with Everton as well, and one of the #United esports players happened there. So yeah, we had all that to kind of balance whilst doing all the kind of interview stuff, and it was as I say, it was a hectic time, but we got there in the end, and it was great fun.
So how do you sort of manage all these people are sort of trying to get in touch with you and wanting interviews? How do you sort of manage that? Do you sort of put it between yourself and your media assistant, or you're thinking you want to give it to the manager? Or
it kind of changed depending on who was coming in. Sometimes if it's just in terms of one person wanting to have a quick chat, then we'd in this instance, me and Dan were kind of split them up. Sometimes they'd reach him directly, sometimes it'd be me, and we just kind of talk about them on a kind of request by request basis. We were good as well. We had our player was Sam Sargent, who's our reserve goalkeeper, and he's quite a good FIFA player, so it was good as well because he was another outlet we could use for media as well. And then on top of that as well, we had the likes of Joby McAnuff, who obviously is a kind of Sky Sports pundit.
Yeah.
And he was quite keen. Obviously, everyone's at home at the moment, so everyone's keen to get involved with certain things. But he messaged me and said, he's keen to do any interviews if needed. So he appeared on Sky Sports a couple of times, and as did the manager. So it was a real team effort. And I think there was a couple of moments where we were probably sinking with the amount of requests we got, but yeah, we managed to get through them all. And it was something that I probably learnt a lot from in terms of my own interview skills and speaking as the subject rather than the interviewer, which is something that I've not really had to do before.
With the sort of players and the manager and stuff, obviously there's no games going off, and was it a bit harder to get them to do all these interviews, or harder to organise people for these things?
In terms of internally at Orient?
Yeah, internally, getting them, say if someone wants to speak to Joby McAnuff or anyone, but he's on furlough or whatever. Is it a bit harder? Is that a bit difficult situation?
I mean, at that stage, the players and management hadn't really been furloughed, so it was for us. It was kind of business as usual, and everyone who was involved has been kind of really willing and really good with it. So luckily, for us, everyone involved was really keen. So it's quite straightforward.
Yeah. So what's that like now then? Are all the players on furlough then?
Yeah. So it's a difficult situation. I'm not sure on the exact statement that's come from the club in terms of PFA, but at the moment it's tough because pretty much all staff have been furloughed, meaning interviews are a bit difficult because you can't seem to be communicating as a club. If they're supposed to be furloughed, then surely that's work. So it certainly makes it a bit difficult in terms of player interviews and manager interviews. So we had the 1 year anniversary today of winning the league. So luckily we've got quite a lot of kind of user generated content in that sense, of people who, you know, so readily have, you know, want to get involved with that and share their photos and their memories of a year ago. And we've obviously got all the archive stuff from last season, which has proven really popular. So yeah, so for the meantime, we're doing okay, and kind of taking it each week as it comes. There's a couple of things in the pipeline in the club which I think are really close to being finalised, which fingers crossed again will be more kind of national kind of news again. And we'll just kind of start that cycle of interview requests all over again.
Yeah, so this sort of stuff, you know, during this period, do you plan for it? Because I mean, I saw someone tweet earlier, it was something like, you know, there's a big sort of pressure for football clubs just to churn out content now because there's no games going on. And obviously, you know, you'd see your impressions go down millions. Is that something you plan for, or do you just think on the day and you do it?
We do it to an extent. We are planning. There's been, in terms of archive footage and looking at what games you can stream from the years before, I didn't have a great deal kind of available to me, but I've been lucky in the sense that I've reached out to one of the supporters who kind of has a mountain of old footage that he's been sharing with me, which has been great. So I've got that all stored and ready to go for when we do get to the other side of the kind of anniversary stuff. So yeah, it's you look at a lot of clubs and some of them are doing kind of similar things in terms of streaming old games, and at the end of the day, you know, you're a football club. What more can you do? It is really tough when there is no football, but hopefully we'll start to see some more kind of inventive ideas to kind of keep people engaged. I think the community aspect, when we see kind of lockdown restrictions taken away a little bit, we'll see a big uptake in terms of community engagement from clubs. I know a lot of clubs are still doing it and doing it really well, but some, I think, including ourselves, have been kind of restricted in what we can do. So I think once we can get back to that side, I think we'll see a lot of content from like foundations and community kind of hubs, hopefully.
You're obviously, you know, the viral tweet connoisseur, as I like to say. What sort of advice would you give to football clubs in lockdown on their content?
It's a good question. I think the main thing is to know your audience. I think listening to what they actually want is always the starting point for me. There's always ways you can look to better, and you know, you can never really stand still in terms of what you're doing. If you want to evaluate what you've done before and think, okay, well, how can we repackage this for what we're doing at the moment? But I think, yeah, first and foremost, I think you need to remember that football clubs are playing a big part in people's lives at the moment. I follow quite a lot of Leyton Orient fans, and seeing today, you know, how much this time last year meant to them, it really does kind of hammer home, you know, what a football club means to people. So as long as you can kind of keep that at heart and, you know, not kind of lose sight of that, then yeah, there's always stories to tell. And I think trying to be as innovative as possible. Recently we did a live Q&A with our chairman and chief exec on YouTube, and again, it was just a simple way, which whilst everyone's in lockdown, just to kind of try something new, which our supporters all seem to take quite well to. So yeah, for me, it's just trying new things, but also listening to the feedback you get.
Yeah, so Leyton Orient seems to be a club who are, you know, sort of a sleeping giant, really. They've gone up to the League Two again. And what's it like being at a club like that? And, you know, realistically, how far do you think you can take it with the, you know, with the media stuff as well?
It's been great. Again, it's a strange one for me because I've only really seen one game of football, so getting a full understanding of what the club's like, it's going to take me a while. Whenever we're on a business call, the chairman always introduces me and says how, you know, I've probably had the weirdest start to any job you can think of, and he's probably right, because I remember I had to self-isolate a week before everything was shut down, so I was kind of 1 week ahead of the curve with everyone else. So yeah, it has been strange, but everyone's been so great behind the scenes. Really supportive manager and all the board from what I've seen so far have been amazing, and they're really forward thinking. They set ambitious targets for what we want to do in terms of streaming the games. So are they down in the National League, Orient were kind of at the front of trying to set up the streaming, and they did do it for a lot of games, despite what I can gather was some heated discussions with the National League. But that's an area where they've kind of invested in, and the infrastructure's there, and they really want to kind of in the future have as many people all over the world watching that. So yeah, the ambition's always there from the top, from the chairman, who's on multiple boards out in the US, and a very successful businessman, and has a very clear idea of what he wants to do. So yeah, there'll always be new initiatives and new ways to reach people, and yeah, looking forward to the challenge.
Obviously, before you joined, all this sort of stuff with just in Edinburgh and stuff happened. You sort of joining the club and not being there to experience that. Have you sort of been thrown into that, and has that sort of been drilled into you?
It's an interesting one, I think, because obviously from EP5's perspective, I kind of experienced it all secondhand, in the sense that we'd obviously played them at Wembley in Justin Edinburgh's last game. There was that kind of connection between the clubs, which was quite positive, because I guess just the way it happened, and also EP5 beat Salford and did Orient a massive favour. So there's a real positive connection between the clubs, and as well with Dave Challoner, the FARB manager at the time, and Justin Edinburgh. So there was that kind of mutual respect between the clubs on that matter. So it wasn't something that was completely alien to me. But also there's a kind of sense that it's a lot more personal to other people than it is to me. And I don't want to. Sometimes it's hard to put yourself in other people's shoes, like how quickly everything happened, and knowing someone that much gravitas around the football club, and what a great guy he was, for it to suddenly change like that. And I've got to say about Elliot, who was in the job before, about the kind of job he did during that time was as good as you'll see in football media. For him to be clearly suffering with immense grief and sadness to kind of produce the content he did was amazing. So you can see, he'll always have that kind of connection with the club, and a lot of people, who are at the club and Justin Edinburgh, there'll always be that connection. So for me to come in a little bit later, it is a certain sense of, I guess, newness, and I guess with everything there you need to kind of have a sense of looking forward and trying to do things in a different way. So yeah, so I guess with that, it can kind of be a fresh start in some ways, if you kind of see the angle I'm coming from.
Do you sort of still stay in touch with the old Leyton Orient media guys? I know you didn't work with them directly, but do they sort of still stay in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, certainly Elliot. I think there's a good community in terms of this kind of thing in football. So every now and then we'll just chat about little things. He messaged me the other day about a journalist that had been in touch with him on something, and yeah, definitely. I think I do need to thank him, actually, because I've been working on like a 2-hour-long video today about last season, like the 2018-19 champion season, and some of the footage in there and the content in there was so good that it's made that job really easy. So I need to make sure I thank him for that. Yeah,
absolutely. And I know we were just joking before we started recording, how are the sort of players to get on with then? Are they already good and interactive?
Yeah, they've been really good. And again, it's probably a case of only seeing them 2 or 3 times, but that's JB McInnes been brilliant. I think one of the first tweets I did was him getting nutmegged in training, and he came over and pulled me to the side and said, is that how you're going to treat the captain? But no, it's all in good humour. Him and Josh Coulson as well, who's another one of the senior players. They've all been brilliant. But from what I can see, it's a great group. The manager, Ross Embleton's fantastic, and the dream to work with. He couldn't be more accommodating in terms of things you need and understanding the kind of pressures you're under. So yeah, it does make me, really excited to get back to kind of things how they should be, and with full stadium and the kind of normal day-to-day life. But yeah, in the meantime, all the support network there is brilliant.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it's going so well for you, and wish you all the best for when the season does start again. I've just got one last question, which I'm going to ask everyone. What is your dream job? To put you on the spot.
My dream job. So this is an interesting one, because I used to think it would have been. So I'm a QPR fan. I used to think it would be being the media manager for QPR, but I think the more I see of football, the less I'd probably want to work for my own team, because it just gets, I don't know, a bit too emotional, I guess, at times. And I know when you work for a team, they pretty much become your team anyway. But I'd like to say perhaps the working for England would be great. Getting to go around the world to different tournaments and, kind of representing your country, doing that kind of stuff would be brilliant.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again for coming on, mate, and we'll have to stay in touch.
No problem at all. Cheers, Dan.
There we go. A very interesting chat with Luke, who's absolutely smashed it in his first couple of months at Leyton Orient, I must say. It seems to be a really forward-thinking club in every department. I've actually just seen that Harry Kane's taken the shirt sponsors for next season as well for 3 different charities, so it's clearly a club on the up, and I wish them the best of success in climbing the leagues over the next few years. We're now on the 5th episode, and if you're still listening to these podcasts, I have to thank you very much. I took last week off to focus on a different project, but I aim to be back with 2 episodes this week and another confirmed for Monday, so full steam ahead again. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a rating if you can on Apple Podcasts and share it on social media. I always make sure to retweet every single share or comment I see.